Hello and welcome everybody to another MythCast. Today we are doing rogues and assassins. I'm here with Darian and I'm Lydia, and we also have a special guest who's not so special because he's in almost all of them now with all of his knowledge. We have the Nickel Knight. We're going to be going over, like I said again, assassins and rogues. So I'm going to let Darian go ahead and introduce all of the facts we are going to be talking about today.
Okay, guys. So we've got three rogue classes that we're going to be talking about today: the Bard, Assassin, and Scoundrel. And all three of them are going to be hybrid style classes. They've all got stealth. They're going to have a lot of really niche abilities, and there's not a lot of bleed through between the three classes. They all get a couple of the same things, like since they all have stealth, they all have like some form of ambush from stealth, but the way they play is going to be very, very different. So the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be Scoundrel. And then I guess for Bard, Nickel, I'm going to get your opinion on that because I remember you played one.
Yeah, I definitely played one.
But yeah, you'd played a Bard back on the old shard.
And so I've actually played Bard, Assassin, and Scoundrel. Same character, a lot of rerolls.
That makes sense. Okay, well then I'll run through like what I know about them, and you jump in and tell me if you have any insider info or any stuff that from when you were leveling them up that players might need to know. So starting off first with the Bard, they have some unparalleled player versus monster abilities. They have the classic UO Bard abilities, so like provocation, where they can make monsters fight each other, peacemaking, where they can make monsters stop fighting, and discordance, where they can drop the stats and skills of monsters. But they also have feats that allow those abilities to be used on players, which is can be pretty scary in PvP when someone hits you with discordance and all of your skills drop and all of your stats drop. It can be a pretty crazy moment for you to realize how slow you are with that chunk of your dexterity taken away, for example. They also have access to, all three of these classes have access to use magic device feat, which, just like the Mage Slayer, is going to allow them to use scrolls and wands of spells that they from the entire spell list. They're really going to need to use jewelry to boost their magery up because they don't have any natively, but it is worth it if you have, like, if you are luck finding for that kind of jewelry. Being able to teleport across bridges or across rivers, just in general, that one ability is worth this feat probably. There's a lot of utility that can come from that's really good in all three of these kits. But I mostly see the Bard as like a support troop that can do a lot of really interesting things with monsters, and I think they might be up at the top for the best boss killer or the best like Paragon Hunter. What do you think, Nickel?
So there's a couple things to keep in mind, especially when you're talking about discordance on a Bard. And it's technically called intimidation here, but it does the same thing mechanically if you're familiar with UO. But so that debuff, one thing you have to keep in mind, especially for PVM, is that it will lower your total XP payout when you kill a monster, because some of the XP based is based on the stats of the monster. So if you dump a monster stats, you will actually pull lower experience points. But if you're just hunting for loot, I mean, man, it really is kind of a trump card that you can play to knock down something stats and make it much more manageable. It's going to do a lot less damage. Its resists are going to fall off pretty sharply, and the same goes for players. If you were to get enough jewelry to boost your discordant skill, it's 100% possible to knock somebody's stats down so far that things like parts of their armor might fall off if they're wearing super heavy armor. Their resists get lowered. All those things go into play, so you can do something like crack open a tank, right? But you know, the Bard itself, especially in PvP, against certain classes, you might have a hard time, going toe to toe with somebody. So it's definitely sort of a rear rank support character. But the trick is, once you reveal the fact that you can discord people, anything that has a bow or spells will probably start trying to kill you. So That's one of those where you want to make sure you can jump into hiding real quick.
Right, using use magic device again. It comes in good with that because you can use invisibility to hide even when you're being targeted, which you can't do with the skill. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things that bards can do that I guess one of the through threads we should talk about is that none of these classes are really combat focused. Even the assassin, which is the most of the three, doesn't have like a lot of the staying power that other classes would do. And it comes down a lot of times to armor. They're locked into a light armor class, and so that definitely affects their combat ability.
Sure, and so the role you're typically going to find that kind of character playing, whether you're talking bard, assassin, or scoundrel, is where they really excel is breaking down other lighter armor targets. So if they can stealth up on, say, your clerics, your archers, your your mages, that's where they're going to be super effective. At bard, especially at a distance, if you discord a mage, you've potentially knocked down their magery stat enough to where some of their higher end spells they may not be able to cast.
Right, they're very good disablers in combat in PvP. They can
Yep.
take other people off the battlefield, and that's an important thing, especially when the groups get bigger and bigger. Moving
Yep.
to the next one, I guess Scoundrel would be the next one we want to talk about. It's got some unique mechanics with luck, in that its luck stat gets repurposed as bonus damage, which is kind of a cool thing since a lot of people are going to be using luck anyway. You pretty much have that already handled. They also have a bag of tricks, sort of similar to the archer's special arrow quiver. That's got a few neat things in there, like the smoke bombs where they can hide. They can drop it, and so they can like stealth away and stuff. They've got, I think, a Molotov cocktail that's really useful in their tricks. I've actually never played a Scoundrel, but I remember that they generate an incredible amount of gold with one of their feats, and they repurpose a pretty non-combat use stat into bonus damage, which I thought was really good.
So one of the things that makes Scoundrel interesting is you have a lot of utility, but it's not really a damager class. It does have the ability to stack in things like luck to add to your damage, but you're going to do a lot of offhand. So if somebody else is drawing fire, you can really get in there and soak in some damage because of the speed. So where they really excel for PVM especially is the Molotov cocktail can be used to clear out light mobs. So if you're horde of skeletons or whatever, they can burn that kind of target down real fast. The problem you have with Molotov cocktails, especially, is if you're on hunts or in PvP, you really have to coordinate that because it also burns players
You'll blow
indiscriminately.
your party up.
And you will you're talking lighter armor characters. You will probably burn them to death.
Right. But a
Um,
lot of, especially some of the classes that don't get very good HP rolls, one mistake like that
yes.
can definitely slow everyone down.
Yeah, but so the other two abilities they have that don't get used real often because they really only have a PvP bend, is throat chop and eye gouge.
Right.
So if you use throat chop on somebody, cleric and mage especially, they can't cast. So you can basically punch them in the throat and then they can't cast at you. You
Right.
have to get up on them to do that, obviously. And so the eye gouge is unique in that when it gets used on you, it places a giant red square on the screen and people can't
Right.
see.
You have no idea. You better hope that you haven't
Yeah.
put
So
any macros on
so I
your
mean
arrow
it's
keys.
right. It's very disorienting for the player for a minute. I mean, there are still some ways you can obviously move around and everything, but while it's in effect, there's a giant square over your character, so you really can't see what's going on.
Right. And those kind of like I guess battlefield control abilities where they're, or I guess they're debuffs, where they take someone out completely. That kind of thing is something that a lot of classes can't do. Mages can do a lot of damage, but they don't have anything that does anything by percentages. It pretty much is a sliding scale with their eval and whichever spell they're doing in your resistance, and that does damage. And if you have good armor, you can shrug off most magical attacks. But if you get throat chopped, it doesn't matter what armor you're wearing, you can't cast anymore. And if that's your entire kit, you have nothing.
Right. And so Scoundrel is also, one of the in fact, so if we're talking in terms of roleplay, on a previous iteration of the Shard, one of the neatest things I saw somebody with a Scoundrel is, Scoundrel gets access to things like snooping and stealing. With snooping, in this particular case, they had a basically player who was role playing as a guard with the Scoundrel as a class, but his job was to search people's bags
Oh,
at
I
meetings.
do
So,
remember
like,
this actually.
go to a council meeting or whatever, right? He was supposed to check bags for like weapons and explosives, and that was kind of somebody using the kit for a role play purpose without necessarily being a rogue.
Right, and there's a few things that we can't do here on Myth that I would like for rogues to be able to do. Like, I would like for people to be able to break into houses. I would like for people to be able to launch ambushes on one another. Like, there are some things that just aren't allowed in the code base right now that we have to find, let's say, safe ways of implementing that don't cause just a lot of
Yep.
chaos. And
Sure.
rogues are going to be they're going to get a lot of that because we've talked about it a couple of times. I think we've over nerfed backstab for assassins, and
Yep.
it was a change that we needed because it fixed a problem in PvP or in PVM, but it also caused another problem. So like that change is going to be edited. Like that's going to be something that we're going to work on because they're not exactly where we want them to be. But I think that if anything, Scoundrel and Assassin especially are going to get better.
Right. And to your point, so there is actually an existing ambush mechanic. But it's not exclusive to rogues.
Right.
If you attack something while you are hidden, you get basically it does a bonus damage and chance to hit.
There's a message for it that pops up.
Yep. Yep. So you'll know when that's in effect. That's especially effective if you have maybe a weapon that can use like the Shadow Strike special move, because you can pop back into hiding and then stack that ambush damage.
Right.
Keeping maybe some role playing mechanics in mind. There are some things where that might not make sense, but as far as like having that as an ability you can use, it is pretty useful.
And understanding how the stealth mechanic specifically works is a really important part of like fighting these three classes in particular, because
Sure.
if somebody uses Shadow
I
Strike and hides in front of you, if you don't have a macro to detect hidden, or if you don't try to like step over them or something, they're going to get away from you and you're not going to be able to damage them while they're healing up.
Okay, so there's trying to reveal them, and then there is knowing that if they have to move too fast, they will reveal
Right.
themselves. So another thing you can do is, if you're, one of the ways I used to defeat that was have a tracking macro and throw an explosion potion.
I mean that
All
you
right,
were
so
definitely
they
prepared for
move,
that.
and in a lot of cases they're going to run to get out of the way, so that'll bring them out of hiding, unless, and this is kind of a good pivot point here. You're talking about the assassin. One of the things that's really neat about the assassin is they can run while stealthed.
Right. They get stealth running. There's only one other class I think that can do that at all, and they have to do it kind of a weird
Yep.
way. The assassin gets a few really unique mechanics. They've got poison crafting that's unique to them. They can make the really high tier poisons. They've got
They can make the highest tier poisons.
Unique backstabs that if you're backstabbed by an assassin, you can't heal and you're bleeding and you've taken a ton of damage. It's still very powerful. Just we probably gave it too many requirements to be used. That's the part of it that'll probably change. I don't think it'll ever do more damage than it does now, because it already does, I think, half of your HP in damage.
But yeah, if you total up from the bleed time, I mean, it's obviously you can kind of heal through that once the grievous wounds, because grievous wounds is the name of the
Right.
feat, but what
It's
it'll
Mortal
do is it
Strike.
applies a mortal strike and a bleed anytime they backstab you,
Right, and you can
which is
heal it
pretty
up, but
serious.
you've got to put your weapon away, and the assassin isn't going to stop stabbing you.
Well, and in the case of a mage, you're probably running and trying to heal, in which case you're not casting.
Right. So yeah, the assassin. I mean, it's obvious to say that the assassin, if they get the jump on you, they have a very good advantage state. If they get the jump on you, they're going to win most cases. There's a lot of things they can do. They can augment their pretty beefy combat abilities with magic from use magic device. They can use a lot of weapons. They've got poison, and everything from stealth. They'll probably be able to backstab things that have more than 100% HP in the future. They can't right now, but I think assassins are definitely going to be moving up. They used to be only evil characters. This is one of the changes
Yep.
we made in Myth, is that assassins were evil requirements only, and so a lot of other combinations weren't there. We've actually added it so that you can be a neutral assassin, thinking that some people would take it maybe as like a church inquisitor type character, or someone who is less morally black and is more morally gray with doing their what is unquestionably evil acts of assassinating people.
Right. And so another thing too that I think we should cover here is the bard, the scoundrel, and the assassin. One of the other things that gives them a little utility is they do actually have a decent amount of the aim skill, enough to usually manage a crossbow, right? So it's not just getting on top of you to stab you and then leverage, fencing weapons, whatever they have in their hand. You may run into one that's going to use some of the lower end crossbows, because they can't, with that level of aim, they're not necessarily going to be great with a bow at a range. There are certain bows they can't equip, but most crossbows are fair game. And there are some crossbows that do low damage but have a fairly high fire rate. So if you're a mage, especially, they're good for running off mages.
Right, and I mean, a lot of people don't. I mean, we've mentioned it a couple of times this episode, but like, if you're getting hit in an area where you don't have armor, so for example, if you're a lower strength class that's wearing armor that gets hit with the bard, intimidate, or discordance skill, and your strength drops below the requirement needed for that armor, your armor falls off. Or if you're a class that can't normally wear armor but has to jump through hoops for it, like the mage with their mage armor, if you're ever hit in an area, because when you take a hit on Myth, it chooses one of six, I think six, like damage areas, and rolls the attack as if it hits that area. And if you're
Right.
it checks the armor level of that area when it rolls the damage calculation. So you could be wearing plate armor except for a helmet and get hit in the head area, and it'll treat it as if you're not wearing armor for that hit. So
Right.
if you're dropping someone's armor off, or if you're crossbowing at someone who's not wearing armor, you definitely can still put out a lot of damage.
Right. And so the other thing too, especially with that, mechanic, having to leverage it against heavier armor targets, there is also an additional debuff if you get hit from behind and you don't have a feat like uncanny defense, right? So uncanny defense treats every attack in a 360-degree circle as if you are getting hit from the front, right? But there are very few classes that have access to that feat.
Right. I think it's like rogue classes and berserker, maybe monk.
Yeah, there's a couple of the barbarian. I think dragoon gets it.
Yeah, and that's it.
And then
Otherwise,
there are some. I believe, and I know we haven't gotten into how that's going to work yet, but there's one of the prestige classes that has it.
it definitely could be. Yeah, no, we definitely have those on the list. We actually have put out a lot of updates in the last little bit, and we've been trying to get the info out to people, so I'll mention it now that we just did a big map update. We've got housing for Nictor available. You're going to have to talk to some NPCs in game to do it, because the elves do things a little bit differently. We added new housing zones to Estvale. We've got new dungeon content coming. We've there's a ton of things that are being added to the game right now. So it's a pretty exciting time for us. Make sure you guys run your patcher next time you're getting back in game.
Definitely.
So I guess what other stuff do you think we need to cover as far as rogues go?
Oh, go ahead.
You know, I was going to say one of the things I didn't talk about is a lot of the other thing that rogues get that do make them kind of fun is they have access to the Jack of all trades feat as it's a kit feat for them. So you can use that to add additional skill points to your to your rogue. So you can pick up some additional skills that you might not be able to fit on, say, a fighter. Now that doesn't stack with humans, so it's if you pick it as a human racial feat, then it's the same
Yeah,
feat.
you can't have the same feat twice, unfortunately.
Right.
But
So you can't stack it to get some crazy high skill cap.
I will say that would be very nice for characters who are picking up a craft, because I'm feeling that pain of, picking up what you think will be just like, okay, one or two skills for a craft, but then you need arms lore, and then you need tinkering, and then you need a little of this, and eventually you can't even take your actual kit feats or your kit skills.
And yeah, and Jack of all trades is super useful on a rogue, but also because unlike some of the other classes, out of the box they get access to things like lock picking, cartography, um, remove trap, which we haven't seen that used a ton in dungeons yet. But if you do play with remove trap, like maybe you want to play a non-combat style rogue that's not heavily combat focused, and if you have a high enough remove trap skill where other players are going to take a ton of damage trying to move over traps, you can just walk over them without taking any damage.
That's awesome. I actually would like to see more trap items added to the game. Like,
Yeah.
I think that would
They're
be
coming.
something that
They're
would be
coming.
okay. Cool.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So, and as far as role play, so that all rogues have access to a really cool feat that adds a little bit of utility. Well, one of those is disguise, which is about to get an overhaul.
A
or
major
getting an
Yes,
overhaul.
a great overhaul. Like all you guys have been working so hard on it. It's from what it sounds, I'm really excited to see it.
Well, I really think it is going to allow people. I mean, I know obviously, right now we are a smaller community, but I still think it'll allow people to switch up their character a little bit and literally impersonate somebody else, race from race, class, everything else, just to mask, who you actually are. But one really cool feat that very few people, leverage a lot of the time is the espionage feat, which will allow you to do things like eavesdrop through doors.
Right, you can listen through doors and windows and.
Yep. And you can't identify who's in the room, so it's showing you text down in the corner, but you can't see who is actually saying what. You can just hear what's being said. So if you want to play like a spycraft type character and or maybe just some guy who can't mind his own
a
business,
gumshoe.
Yep. Oh yeah.
A
Like,
private investigator.
Good old
definitely
gumshoes.
got
right. Private investigator, whatever you want to do, right? So it's super cool to use, and of course, if you do things like log your journal in game, or maybe take notes a lot, and maybe your job might be reporting to a particular NPC or PC in a town or organization. So you can kind of engage in spycraft, and I 100% will tell you, if that is something I see you doing in game, I will probably just hand you an EXP boost.
Also,
Yeah,
we'll help you
agreed.
with the thing you're writing about.
Right. Yeah, seriously.
So, because it is something that you rarely ever see. I used it a lot when I played a rogue, and it is a lot of fun, especially if there's sort of an air of politics and intrigue to be played with. It's a lot of fun.
Well, that's actually a good way that we can segue into some more Shard news, is that we're trying to open up the other cities specifically so that we can get more politics going on. we can get players into some positions. We can start splitting people up in the groups that they probably want to be in.
Right.
Because they've, everybody's been stuck in the same town for a while. So everybody's been a little nicer than they probably would have been in other situations. And that's, that shows players that like are mature enough to understand, or, played the game enough to understand that like you've got to have some avenues for play. You can't close everything off. But as we get more and more
Sure.
things open, and as we have, more options for people to play in a little more sustainable way for bad guys, well, we're going to see a lot more of those. And that's something I'm really excited about because I want to see this class system really pushed to the brink with a bunch of like different groups fighting each other.
Right. And I think we'll get there with some of the stuff that's coming out. I mean, I think we'll probably need to see the other cities done up. I mean, I think Black Sands is next.
Yep.
And that is really going to open some doors, because unlike some of the other cities that have a particular religious or racial aspect to them, Black Sands is kind of like it's sort of everybody just shows up here. It's your vagrants, your wanderers, your people that don't belong anywhere else, right?
Right.
And like definitely staff, like we are starting to think of what the next big staff run campaign is going to be, and we have like people are still starting to come up with their own kind of guilds and like followings, and people are starting to like split up to their own areas and people, which is really what we want to happen around now. And so the next big campaign, which we're still writing, because we want it to be, it's still going to be a 3-parter, but we want it to be more catering to like, people have sides now. People have sides now, and there's more stories. Like you guys, the players, have created such a wonderful addition to our lore, which is what we have been wanting. And we have a lot to work on now, with different player characters. People got different stuff going on. We have a mill having their equinox festivals, which are wonderful. We have some Barlow people who are having their own, rituals. Not to spoil anything, but there is like a lot of, other than just stuff going on in Estvale, people are starting to branch out to find their own little like homes. So we're hoping, and we want the next campaign to be, we don't want to make it exclusive, but we do want to start to like cater it to our sides. And those sides, of course, like any world, are not necessarily good or bad. It is what people portray it. Like an evil person, a Barlow follower, quote unquote, wouldn't be evil to themselves. They would be doing their bidding for their master, for Barlow, trying to, get up there to, spite Aralcor because, they feud. And, Aralcor will be, of course, thinking down on Barlow, and everyone has their own agendas. And to them, they're not bad, but to other people they could be bad. Same with like Emil. Emil just loves nature, loves her children. She will do whatever she can to protect them. So to some people, Emil's choices or Emil's followers' choices may not be the best choice for all of, Terra, but it's to their following and to their god. And that's what we're trying to like, what is forming now, which is wonderful. We're getting new players daily. We're getting people writing new stories. We have 3 character slots open now, so people can explore more than one god, more than one class, more than one character. And hopefully, people find what they're looking for, and we're always willing to help people, forge that. Just keep PMing staff members, asking us for more intel, and we can, help get you and your character and your following where you want to be.
Right. And, now that there's so many other threads going on, it's helped
Mhm.
us out a lot with doing different, like getting different projects going. So, we're still in alpha. We've still got a lot of these things that we want to do. So it was pretty good to be able to change gears and work on some stuff. The next few quests probably aren't going to be God focused. They're going to be a little
Right.
more like world focused on showing, different parts of the things we're doing. We're working a lot on some map stuff. So it would be bad not to show it off. We've got some places that we definitely want to do some quests in. And Nichols got some really cool ideas for some of the NPC stuff he wants to do too.
Right, and I don't want to, no spoilers, but so we just want to make sure everybody knows that I think to some extent you are going to always have sort of a PvP bend to some of what goes on when some of these organizations start clashing. But so one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is as we move forward and we start writing more lore and doing more stories, is that one of the things that I'm always trying to do, especially when I'm setting up dungeons or setting up quests or whatever it is I'm doing, um, it's important to remember that the world itself is a character, and it's a character that we play, right? So, and when I say we, I mean staff. So there are always going to be aspects of the world that present a challenge to the entire player community, not necessarily one area of the player community. But it could be very intensely focused on one particular group of players. That's really going to depend on some of the role play that goes on, how you guys interact. But one of the things to keep in mind is I'm constantly watching what people are doing in game when I'm on. I keep pretty good notes on what's going on. So if you start seeing things that are in response to things your characters do, just be aware there are certain things that I'll ask about if it's could potentially change your role play severely. But then there are some things that smaller things that I may not necessarily ask about. You may do something, and as the folks who are playing a lot of the mill followers can tell you, there are things that I've kind of just taken a little bit of liberty with to go and do and provide them with some areas where they can do some of the things that they do, and that was, I would say, a good thing. But then there are some things that we may end up doing that may not always be interpreted as a positive. But it is important to keep in mind as you're role playing that those effects can impact you or your organization.
Right, and I mean, people really only remember stories for the conflict, for the down
Right.
notes. So those things are never meant to, stop a project. They're meant to add something to a project. So most obstacles are meant to be there for, for the people that are going over them. And never think that any of those things that we're doing them to spite people, because that's a weird way to reward people who enjoy playing this hobby with us. We wouldn't do that.
Right. And so that's kind of where I was also going to, is that it's not done out of spite. There may be things that are going on in the world, or things that you've done that we're over in staff channel dice rolling, or whatever. So hey, you do this, and this might be an outcome. And there are some things like that we would discuss, but then there are things that you may not get a lot of heads up on.
I love threads being pulled from like quests that were weeks ago and it affecting something in a future quest. Like I love that kind of stuff where it's
Oh, that's my favorite.
a
I love it.
callback from weeks.
Those are always kind of fun to, not necessarily to use the term resurrect, but what you kind of get in a way, it's sort of a form of a little bit of fan service, because you're able to they've been engaged for what you're doing was so long that those things sort of, they remember where those things kind of fit into their story. And in some cases it might be something innocuous that they overlooked or forgot, but then when this other thing comes full circle, all of a sudden that moment that seemed very minor might be pivotal and important.
Right, and it's really cool to see like what parts of quests players have really like latched onto. I've learned a lot about the anatomy of the way that we do quests from our players here. We've changed it up a lot. I think the next ones are probably going to be changed up as well, because we keep trying different formulas to see what works the best. and we've definitely found some things that like players do react well to. So the next few of them should work pretty well.
Yep. And there are going to be events that may not cater to or appear to cater to a particular player's play style on their face. But the important thing to remember is we do try and find something in almost every event we do that anybody can jump in and participate and appreciate. But some of that is up to you. I just I'm always a little worried because you do have some people that might on it, if they just read the tin, right? Hey, this is not for me. I'm not going to show up. So I would encourage people, not to do that and sort of take that dice roll and give us a chance.
Yeah, a lot of the events have like a nuanced sort of a layer to the storytelling where, like, for example, we could be doing a tournament, but the tournament organizer, like, in story, their child could be kidnapped and they're trying to raise money enough to like get them back. So like there's another event going on where the guards are trying to like find a person while this thing is going on and we're trying to sting these people. But we don't put that on the flyer because we want that to like organically happen in game. We've done events where like 2 or 3 different things are happening at the same time, and it's hard to know how much to warn people, because if you warn people at all, it takes away that sort of like moment of realization where they realize that something bigger is going on with this like seemingly run of the mill quest.
Exactly. That's very, yeah, I think that's good to be said because some people, you just need to know that going into an event there's always another option. We always try to make, like, we know not everybody's into PvP, so we always try to make an option that you can participate in, not PvP, or PvP to your heart's content. Permadeath, that's not like a worldwide thing that we endorse, I guess you would say, but it is, of course, 100% allowed. If you read the rules, everyone has to be okay with it. So if you want more, I guess hard mode, you could just be more prominent where, like, my character is like win or die, and we roll the dice to see, like, we're basically willing to, and we want people to have the experience that they want. So people do come and talk to us, and like within the rules, we just want everyone to have fun. We know how some places, some storylines in some games can be really restricting, and we try our best to have the lore, that we have, and also the experience that you want. And it's been a really hard and fun balance and challenge for us, just to make sure all of you guys, get what you want out of your character and out of your storyline.
Right, and we work on more of an honor system. Like, we're not saying that you can't permanently kill each other. We're
Yeah.
saying that we're not going to set the parameters for you to permanently kill each other. What we'll do is we will fairly judge. I'll arbitrate duels and I will arbitrate PvP conflicts between groups.
Totally.
I will be the invisible referee, making sure that like everything goes by it, and when someone goes down, I will remove them from the battlefield and like remove the ghost and let the body lay there. I will totally do that because that doesn't cause the problem that a lot of these rules do, where any little bit of gray area, any little bit of nuance becomes something dramatic that the staff has to deal with, and we're just trying to avoid that. And so honestly, if people still have like the desire to have that kind of storyline and have that kind of content where 2 rivals are building up to like a grand duel at the end, like a final encounter, we will make that happen and make it awesome and do like a cool event with it so that you guys can play that thing out, because that's good storytelling. We will totally do that. That sounds great.
Right. And so that's, part of the reason. So things like, we're talking about, permadeath and things like that. when you pivoting, if we're pivoting back to specifically discussing classes like the assassin, that could be a huge part of somebody's role play that maybe they're getting hired to do like assassinations or whatever. So those sorts of things can absolutely happen, and it may not be it may be one player having a conflict with another player, and then here's this assassin as a third party, right?
Mhm.
So that could happen, but there are, like Darian said, there's some rules. It's not just going to be like, hey, I hired an assassin, and
That's it.
as soon as they manage to PvP this guy to death, that's it. I mean, he dies, right? We don't. That's not what we're
I
talking
mean, I
about
don't
here.
need much more than that, other than like the three of them. If any of the three of those characters die, they PD. That's fair. Like, yeah, that sounds great. Do it. Let people know that you're doing it, and then have a spy versus spy rogue like assassin off. That shit sounds awesome.
Yeah. Followed by dance off, please. I am all
Yeah,
for
definitely a dance off.
Yep. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Assassin off.
Reminder that you actually can dance in Myth. Reminder that this
You
is a
definitely
thing.
yep.
can. That's a thing.
You definitely
With
can.
the
So
.animate command, you can
Yep.
.animate
make
command, you can totally
dancing
dance.
macros.
Heck yes.
So and to keep some of the things in mind here too, since we just we were talking about like spy versus spy or assassin versus assassin. You do have to keep in mind that hey, if you were to go put in a like a hit out on another character, there 100% has to be a possibility that can go
Yep.
back on you,
Yeah.
right? So this is
Certainly.
not going to be like you have 100%
Nope.
immunity from any repercussion of that choice, right? So that could hit you.
We're all about
Right.
balance.
And I mean, if you really are saying that, like, the story has gone to the point, this is the point where I need to remove this other character from the game, you should be willing to. You should be so determined that you're willing to put your character on the line for that.
Oh,
Because
definitely.
Right.
that's
Fair is
what we're
fair.
saying. If you're not willing to do that, then you shouldn't really be willing to kill the other character.
Mhm. Like, yeah.
Because you might hire the world's worst assassin, and
Get both of you
he
Poison?
killed.
What's
gets.
poison?
Yeah, I mean, he gets killed, or he or she gets killed, or gets captured and gives you up
Exactly.
immediately,
And then,
right?
yep.
So, you know,
Man, see, I would love to
Oh,
see
that would
an
be so
assassin
good.
betray someone. Like,
Yep. And we're willing to like help make sure that plays out safely and as stress-free as possible.
I mean, we could even make this kind of thing events. Like, we could definitely do this kind of like heist, bank robbery, assassination, something event for people.
Yes. I mean, yeah, if people like, I know some people, it's been slow a little bit because, people are getting back to school, getting back to like all that kind of stuff. But we've had a couple people start to become a little more, able to spend their time. So if people want to, we're working on, I don't know if the Guildstone's fixed yet, but we want like the Guildstone to be working so we can have, guilds and all that fancy stuff to go along with.
Right. I think I posted the guild requirements in that
You
blog that went
did?
up.
Does the
Guild
stone
right,
work?
and
Because I know it
we
disappeared after like a
we
day, right?
could
well,
we could
well,
never get it to
so
do
so
it
the
on command.
it will. I don't remember how fast the stones used to disappear, but that was a problem we used to have on Rise
It
of
doesn't
Empires as well, which
actually
is
affect anything. You just got to restone every now and then.
That's
yep,
And I'm
so
sorry,
weird.
and
guys, but that might
and
be a
it's and it
thing because we couldn't get it to do it
it's
again to
kind of
test it.
That's
annoying.
so weird. That is. Uh,
Um,
So far it hasn't done
but
it, is what I'm saying.
whoop
But
whoop.
yeah,
whenever it
well,
does,
and so a couple things to keep in mind though too, and we will eventually probably write a guides page um for guilds, like how to get one, and what's available to you if you get one.
right, like how we do hideouts and stuff like that.
There, but yeah, I mean, there's obviously going to be some additional risk involved, um but if you really want to bring a group of friends, roll a common group of characters that have a collaborative sort of been to them, or if you're just you're playing with people you've never played with before, you meet up here, you role play, and you decide you kind of want your own organization. We're all about that.
Yes,
Right. We will build you a hideout. We will do a
we
quest
most
line with
certainly
you to get your
will.
stuff. Because it's not really that hard to bang out like a little area for people. Like if people are doing, roadside wood bandits, we can make a little tent camp for them in no time. It takes no time really, and you just put it in with whatever map update we're doing. Like right now, Nickel, I think, mentioned that the next one we're doing is Black Sands. It's going to get a major uplift. Like I think a lot of that is going to look different. I don't think it's going to look the way it does it right now at all.
Like I with the Tuareg, that kind of has it's been definitely got a major facelift, but overall thematically it's very similar to what it
Right, it's
was.
like
But
extrapolated.
I think when you're looking at Black Sands, that may look totally different than it does now when
Right.
we're done. And I really do think once you open up sort of that neutral city that's sort of home to any number of okay, you could be some you know questing knight, or you could be sort of a shady assassin type, and you're occupying similar or the same spaces, because it doesn't have a particular persuasion as far as Estvale is obviously sort of home of the humans, and Nictuare's home to the elves, and Black Sands is just sort of whoever shows up, right? It's all comers. So
Whoever's strong enough
as
to
I
eke out a living there. It's the Thunderdome.
yeah, and so as I kind of described it, not holding anybody to anything too, but I recently, and some of you will know kind of what I'm referring to, but think 12th century England. Okay, so you got like your old nice, the areas that are built up because they were old, right? And then you might have just sort of this sprawl on the outside that's kind of people just show up and settle there because it's not really a city in the traditional sense.
Right, and it's such a hodgepodge of different things. So
Yep.
hopefully we're going to be able to do some really creative things, especially with housing. I want some unique housing there. After Black Sands, we're probably going to open the outside of Montset. There's some story reasons why the inside of it's going to be dwarf only. They just don't really like you guys that much. I'm sorry, but the outside of it is this like large sort of log in the mountains. And that's going to open up for housing as well. We're going to do that one. Mirdistran's still going to be last because it's going to be the most, I think, avant garde of all of them. And they're all going to have housing. They're all going to have, the NPCs that are needed. I suspect what will happen is that people will spread out for their different like factions and different like government role plays because people are going to start taking these government positions as well. But since events are still going to be centralized in little sections, like the last few were started in Black Sands, I think people are still going to sort of stay in those central location taverns. And we're going to be opening more ways to fast travel as well. So even with the map getting a little bit bigger, even with housing spreading out, I think it's still going to be about the same. People are going to show up for quests just like they do now, and you're still going to bump into people at the same areas because it's still going to be the same number of banks.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that you want to keep in mind is at some point we might run like a regional event versus a major event. And so a major event is probably something we wouldn't necessarily have any qualms if every character from every walk of anywhere just sort of showed up to participate in the event. But just keeping in mind that if we're talking about a local event or something like that, I mean, if your character um, doesn't really have a reason to, like, I don't know, ride to the other side of the map, don't feel pressured or obligated to attend that event. If it's something pivotal, we'll probably let you know sort of outside of that channel.
Right, and never think that we're saying don't come to the events. Like you'll always have the
Yep.
opportunity to.
Yeah.
But they won't have the same like impetus on them that right now where like Estvale events come specifically from the militia, and if you don't help, you get kind of the stink eye from the well-to-do citizens of Estvale. That probably will go away.
I think to some extent, some of that could go on between characters. For example, if you were supposed to show up as part of the militia and then you didn't, and hopefully, if it was like a real life thing, people can be accommodating.
Right.
But those kind of things actually could be, fallout in role play if that's something, characters agree on, and we don't want people to shy away from that either.
Long ago, I played somewhere where I was a cadet and someone played a sergeant and made me run laps. And I remember laughing so hard. My character didn't think it was funny at all, but I cracked up at the idea that this guy was making me run laps.
Yep. And that kind of stuff is fun if that's what you want to do. There's some people that get very into role playing. That sort of character is a lot of fun to play.
Right, yeah, and there's going to be more opportunities for government-minded, politically minded characters, especially moving forward with the cities moving up. If that's something that you've been thinking about, if you want to like make a group and sort of raise the ranks, or if you want to start working your way up a city, now is definitely the time to do it. Now in alpha, before those things are really like the die is really really cast.
And keep in mind too that not to discourage trying to do as much of this organically between players as possible, but if you just don't feel like you have the support for that, but you still want to do it, there are the current NPC leaders are mostly played by staff. So you would be role playing with us, and obviously it's not necessarily we're going to let you shortcut things, but if you want to get into that, or you have aspirations to, especially now that you have a third character slot, don't hesitate to do that. Just be aware that there are going to be some restrictions in place. For example, we wouldn't want the same player to be playing a leader character in Estvale as Nick Tuare, right? We just because there's too much potential for you to basically start role playing inside of a vacuum where you're sort of directing things between your own characters.
Right. We want to make sure that you're not playing both sides of a conflict. And again, that goes back to like the honor system. That most people have been really good about that kind of stuff.
Yep. And that's a bridge that we'll cross if we come to it. I'm hoping we won't. But there's always that possibility, so just keep that in mind.
Right. Salty Cat asks if people are wanting to go the more political route, should they talk to us? Yeah, just send one of the staff members a message.
Please
let us know what you have in mind, and we'll let you know what's going on and try to point you the best we can. We can't make the citizens of any of these cities love you, but we can definitely point you in the right direction.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if you mean mechanically.
No, I mean
we
mechanically
can,
we could.
Mechanically we could, yes, indeed.
Mechanically, we can. It's doable.
Yep.
Okay, guys, we've done about an hour, but I'm going to ask if there's any questions. Anybody got any questions that they want to throw out?
Yeah, we took a wonderful segue into permadeath and the deep bowels, but I think it ties in well with the assassination. So that was
it's true. Well, that's
totally planned.
That's something that's really hard to balance. The idea that the assassin should be able to bust out of the shade and stab someone for
in
a
the
billion
heart
damage and kill them, because well played, well planned out assassinations should reward the assassin, which to a point makes complete sense. Like, yes, it should reward the assassin for a well thought out, well planned assassination.
I think XP and just like
but on the other hand, though, there's nothing about like someone coming out of stealth and just ganking you and you have no idea what happened. Like, that's not
to be fun.
Satisfying for a player. So balancing those two things together is very difficult.
Right. And to answer, Salty Clat's question there. So yeah, you have to keep in mind too with the slight change we've made from earlier versions of the shard. It's 100%, possible for you to take tinkering on an assassin, and if you want to make traps, have fun.
Right.
So because tinkering does allow you to craft traps.
I don't think there's anything
And
particularly robust. I think they're like a flamethrower, a dart, and a
well, yeah, but that's,
poison
if
dart,
that's something that
maybe.
people want as a feature, there's always possibility to expand
Right.
that. Um, but the other thing that I don't see too many people making use of, and it is fun to do with an assassin, especially. A lot of people may not know this, but you can climb trees and you can hide in them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
So
can
so
climb
it is
trees.
kind of fun to do like treetop
Hmm.
ambushes.
Ah,
Speaking from
of course
experience.
you can.
Um,
You can do
And
that.
Virgil actually asks, what if any skills will make a tune harder to track?
Stealth, I think, doesn't tracking have a compared role with stealth
yes.
for finding
So
people?
if you have exceptionally high stealth or you've stacked a bunch of items to raise your stealth skill, you can still be tracked, but it is harder for you to appear on the
Right,
tracking
and I think
gun.
it cuts the range down too.
And it does,
Yeah.
and it's easier for you to duck the
Oh, and
range.
there's some racial items that add a lot of stealth. There, I think the
There are,
elven or dwarven boots add like 25 or 50 stealth.
yeah.
There's
So there are some really cool. So the elf tailoring racials do add stealth, and a ton of the drow racials add
yeah.
stealth. Ton of them.
Nice.
So there is a lot of potential for you if you really want to buff your stealth. For whatever reason, whether you're playing an assassin or you just don't like being tracked. What if
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why
you're
are
the
you trying
you're
to
the
invade
very
my
very early
privacy?
very early version of that person that doesn't like getting tracked by the government wherever you go, right?
And I guess, for someone who's just wondering, if just to make it clear, when you play like an assassin or a rogue, it's not like expected for you to like kill people, like PK people. But it is kind of like you could use it in role play in other instances. Um, and we won't like one, you shouldn't use assassin and rogue as an excuse to PK people because uh although we are
That's
yeah
lame.
although we are for permadeath, but we are for it fairly. So if you feel like that is something, if you come back and say, oh, but I'm an assassin or I'm a rogue, like of course I'm supposed to do this, you are, but everybody has to be all right with it. The rules have to
Right.
Your
apply.
class name is just the name for the feat you have.
The
The
kit,
kit,
right?
exactly,
It's
for
the name
all
for your
the
kit. It's the name
skills.
of your kit.
And that's where
If
role
you're a
play
mage
comes in
slayer, you
too.
don't have to slay mages.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's where role play and imagination comes in. You use the skills in the package to your advantage to what type of character your character is. Um, and the more out of the box you go, the more interesting your character becomes, and perhaps the more experience points you will get in the long run.
And 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 so one of the things to keep in mind, and I probably say this as we're about to wrap up, but one of the most interesting times I had playing as an assassin was, especially if you're playing a human and you have that expanded skill cap and access to things like jack of all trades. It's a lot of fun to use those extra skill points, especially the way we've set things up, to pick up crafting or gathering skills. And what I did in that case is I passed my character op as a prospector. So living in, one town, everybody knew him as this, but then in this completely other town that I spent my time at, I was always in disguise, and I had a pack horse, and I ran around and gathered like wood and ore, and I sold stuff to people. So I'm playing like two different identities, and so one of the fun things to do, at least what I like to do, is if you didn't know this, you can copy and paste character profiles out of like Notepad or whatever. And so when I was in disguise, I would kind of save a persistent name and a particular look, and I would paste in that profile, right? So if anybody ran into me when I was in point A or point B, I was two different people, right? And so it is kind of hard to sometimes keep track of what one character knows versus the other, just like in real life. But that is kind of something cool you can do, like from a role play perspective.
Right. Rogue has a lot of abilities that affect like the social aspect of Myth. Like they have a lot of role
Yep.
play application, more so than I think a lot of the other classes. Like there's a lot more things you can role play as a bard than I would say as a fighter. There's more
Yep.
little nuanced things you can add in with these three classes in particular, because they have such a wide skill set and you can add
Right.
stuff onto them.
And one of the I guess most entertaining bards that I ever saw played was somebody playing a bard drill instructor, so that intimidation was him yelling at you and lowering your skills. So I enjoyed that immensely, but that's kind of a fun thing to play with if you want to maybe take a different angle on that type of character to where you're not necessarily a bard, but you're leveraging that feat in a different manner.
I'd like to see a preacher. I think that would be like a cool way to play a bard, is make them
Just debuff the
like
audience.
do the cleric thing, but do it as an evangelist.
Yes.
Yeah, and those kind of things, are neat, and they're fun to watch, especially for us, because there's a lot of things that I do a lot of the spawning and the things that get up set up in games. So I don't necessarily get too many surprises, and there are definitely times when it's hard for me to as a character to like act shocked when I go to a new dungeon or something,
Well,
and
I've
sometimes
never seen
it
this
comes off as like,
before.
I'm sure it comes off as flat. People are like, he's totally whatever. Like
We're just trying to play too.
yeah, that's really it. So when we see somebody do something like that and sort of break the mold, that is fun for us too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, I think we've got a little bit over an hour, so I think we're going to be wrapping up now.
I think so.
All right, guys, thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming
thank
to
you.
hang out with us during this MythCast. We're going to be doing something a little different next week. We're not going to be doing another class set. We are going to be switching. We're going to be switching to doing sort of town history and
Yes.
town culture.
I'm so excited for that.
We're going to be doing like the first one we're going to do is Estvale because it's been open for the longest. And then we're going to be doing Nick Tor after that. So we're going to be giving like the lore and history of it, some of the inspirations. We're going to be talking about some of the features in the town that people may not know of, and our plans for it. And we probably are going to be the events that are going to be coming on, and maybe what we'd be looking for players that want to rise up the ranks a little bit. We might be able to talk about that kind of stuff too.
People can ask questions about them also, and we'll try not to we won't give spoilers, but we will answer any questions people have that don't spoil anything.
If you have lore questions, I think that'll be a good time for those kind of things.
Perfect.
We'll be able to deep dive into some topics that we haven't really talked about. We're also going to be introducing some new villains soon, so that probably will help out because we've got new areas that we want to use.
Super pumped. The new mapping team has been working so hard, and they've been coming up with some great stuff. So way to go, all you guys. You guys have been so good.
Right. We really do appreciate everybody's support. So, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I'm going to end the recording now. We appreciate you guys staying with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good one.